Hey everyone, before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love seeing how global our community is. Now, let's get started. What if the siren in your town was never meant to warn you to stay inside, but to lure you out alone onto an empty road where no help can reach you? I did not believe that kind of thing could be real. I worked nights. I trusted systems, radios, and red blinking lights. But on the night the siren on County Road 6 started screaming, I learned that some alarms are not about storms at all, and some of them are already calling your name before you even hear them. It was one of those small town nights where the world feels half asleep. The air outside was cool, but the dispatch room still smelled like hot electronics and burnt coffee. The AC hummed in the ceiling. The fluorescent lights above my console buzzed with that sick green glow that makes everything look a little dead. Outside those windows were miles of cornfields, a 2-block main street, and not much else. I was alone on shift until 4 in the morning, watching the map and trying not to think about how quiet it was. I was on probation back then. One more screw up and I was done. I had transferred from a busier county after sending a patrol unit to the wrong cross street during a cardiac call. The guy lived, but the chief here never let me forget how close I had come. My job, my reputation, even my relationship all hung on me surviving a few months of clean, boring night shifts. My girlfriend had already said she was tired of me choosing some dead-end dispatch job over normal hours. So I needed that night to be uneventful, a clean log, a simple report that no one would remember. Instead, the siren on County Road 6 went off. The board lit up. A red indicator blinked. CR6 tornado warning siren active. The weird thing was, there were no storms. Radar was crystal clear. No watches, no warnings. I silenced the alarm on the console and checked the schedule. No test was planned. I wrote it down as a likely glitch, hands already sweating a little on the keyboard. A few seconds later, the siren lit up again. Same line, same road. I acknowledged it, and my eyes dropped to the tiny timestamp in the log, 3:17 a.m. Even though the wall clock said it was only 2:41, I shifted in my chair, and that was when I noticed the taped note hidden just under the console edge, yellowed and curling. In thick marker, someone had written, "If County 6 siren goes off after midnight, do not go out there." The siren indicator flashed again like it wanted to argue about that. I clicked into the system asset list and frowned. The County Road 6 siren was labeled decommissioned, power cut, 5 years AGO. While I read that, the headset in. My ear filled with static that sounded disturbingly like someone crying a long way away, drifting through the siren tone as if they were under it. I called the on-call siren tech first. He answered groggy, swearing under his breath. "That line's dead, man," he said. "They chopped that pole years back. You're probably dealing with the new software acting up. Clear it and go on with your night." I called the volunteer fire chief next. He laughed it off, told me our fancy new control panel always freaked out during big temperature swings. "You're fine," he said. "If you see a funnel cloud in your coffee, then call me." But as we joked, the siren kept tripping, and when I took my headset off, I could hear a faint version of it bleeding through the station walls, thin and far away, like it was approaching town even though the sky outside the windows was clear. The clock on my monitor ticked over. The wall clock behind me lagged by a couple of minutes. My phone showed a different time altogether. I clicked through old logs on County Road 6, looking for anything similar. One incident came up from years before. Fatal crash. Caller hysterical. The note from the dispatcher back then was short. Caller hung up. Screaming metal in background. No mention of a storm, just a timestamp. 3:17 a.m. My stomach tightened. I had never paid attention to how many bad things seemed to happen at the same minute. By then, the ticking element for the night had become painfully clear. The chief reviewed every weird event when he came in at 4. If my log showed repeated siren activations with no field check, I was cooked. Deputies were tied up on a domestic on the east side. EMTs were on a transfer run. If there was even a chance someone had hit a pole or flipped a truck out there, and I did nothing, that was my career gone. Maybe more. The siren indicator flashed again. 3:17 a.m., according to the system. The smell of hot asphalt somehow seemed to seep into the room. Even though the nearest paved road was a block away, the AC kicked off with a dull thump, and suddenly the dispatch room felt too still. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered twice, throwing the room into stuttering shadows. The siren sound outside grew louder, then softer, like it was circling invisible around the town. For a moment, I wondered if it was another county's siren echoing wrong on the wind. I grabbed my in-truck tablet to check the control panel status. It showed the County 6 unit as offline, disconnected, like the tech had said. That should have been reassuring. Instead, I stared at the screen and watched the time in the corner jump from 2:53 to 3:17 in a single blink. I had two options. I could sit tight, keep logging the glitch, and hope the chief believed the tech's excuse in the morning. Or I could break protocol, leave the console, and take the county truck out there myself to check. The note under the console told me exactly what the last guy thought about that choice. Do not go out there. My file, my future, and some stranger's possible last moments hung in that gap. I picked up the radio handset, left a quick note on the whiteboard that I was doing a siren check, and grabbed the keys anyway. The second I crossed the threshold and locked the dispatch door behind me, the siren sound changed. It wasn't filtered through speakers anymore. It rode on the night air itself, thin and sharp, coming from somewhere out past the cornfields. The town shrank in my rearview mirror faster than it should have, like the darkness was swallowing the lights whole. Half a mile out, my radio hissed into nothing. I tried the deputies. No response. Tried the tech again. Dead air. The only steady sound left was the rising and falling wail ahead of me and the low growl of the truck engine under my feet. Out on the county highway, the stars were painfully bright. No clouds, no lightning. The smell of hot asphalt rolled in through the vents as if the road had just been poured that day. Tar and heat, and something metallic underneath it. My in-truck tablet pinged a notification. I glanced at it. The siren control map had gone gray, every asset offline. At the top of the screen, the time sat at 3:17 a.m. and did not change. I checked my dash clock. 3:17, my phone. 3:17. The road sign for County Road 6 appeared in the headlights. Leaning a little to one side, I stopped at the intersection, my hands tightening on the wheel. This was my last chance to turn back and blame the whole thing on software. My career might have survived a missed glitch, but if there was really someone out there and I turned around, how was I supposed to live with that? I turned onto County Road 6. Gravel crackled under the tires. As soon as I made the turn, the siren pitched up in volume as if I had walked straight under its speaker. Even though the sky above me was empty and black, GPS told me I was a quarter mile from the old siren's location. The smell of hot asphalt got so strong it made my eyes water, even though this was a gravel road. The siren was unbearable now, echoing inside the cab, in my teeth, in the steering wheel. I rolled forward slowly until the map marker on the screen lined up with the hood. I expected a pole, a rusted cage, something. There was nothing but an empty concrete pad on the side of the ditch, for rusted bolts jutting up like broken teeth. No tower, no speaker, no wires, just that slab and the sound screaming from nowhere. The truck engine coughed and died. All the lights on the dash went out except the clock. 3:17 a.m. My phone screen would not wake up. The siren kept howling, now with a strange hitch in it, like it was breathing. The radio, which had been useless since I left town, crackled to life. For a second, it was just static and the distant grind of metal. Then I heard a voice over it, panicked, begging for help, describing the siren on County Road 6 and how it was too loud. Inside the truck, I can't get the engine to start. It was the same call I had read in the old log. Only now I realized the voice on the tape was mine. I froze, staring at the empty concrete pad, while my own voice on the radio screamed about headlights coming at me too fast, about the smell of something burning that was not gas or oil. The siren rose to a pitch that felt like it would peel the skin off my face. I saw, just for a second, a smear of greenish light in the rearview mirror, like the glow of the dispatch fluorescence bending around the curve of the road. The radio cut out mid-sentence. Metal shrieked somewhere very close. Even though no other lights shone on that road at all. They say there is an old 911 tape they play for new dispatchers sometimes, when the chief wants to scare the cocky ones. It is an old county truck crash on County Road 6. The dispatcher's voice on the tape sounds a lot like mine, describing a siren that should not have had power and a timestamp frozen at 3:17 a.m. halfway through the call. Somewhere under his words, very faint, but there if you listen with headphones. You can hear that siren howling and the hiss of hot asphalt cooling after something heavy slid across it. No one can explain why the system still logs fresh County 6 siren activations every few months, always tagged to a decommission line, always at 3:17 a.m. The techs blame leftover code. The chief blames old wires. But if you visit our town and happen to be driving near those fields late at night, roll your window down for a second. If you smell hot asphalt where there's only gravel, or if you hear a siren with no storm, keep going. Do not turn down that road. Some alarms are not meant for you to respond to. Some of them are just rehearsing the moment they finally get you alone. If you ever drive past a grain silo at night, remember it is not just holding corn or soybeans. It is holding everything that has ever fallen in and never climbed back out. Some of those things forget they died. Some of them are still trying to finish their shift. I was the night foreman at a little co-op elevator on the edge of a nowhere town. Just cornfields, a 2-lane highway, and a string of gray silos like a row of headstones. My job was simple. Keep the conveyors off, keep the readings right, and have every moisture and weight report ready before the state inspector rolled in at 6 in the morning. One more write-up and I was done. My dad had worked the same place before his back gave out. So for him, me keeping this job was some kind of family honor test. That night, the yard was quiet. No fans, no dryers running, just the wind sliding around the steel and the distant hiss of trucks on the highway. Inside the control room, the smell of coffee and dust and moldy grains sat in the air like a second skin. The control panel glowed in front of me, a grid of little green and red lights. My eyes drifted over the list of bins until they stopped on Silo 3. Silo 3 was tagged in big red text. Out of service. Do not enter. It had been like that since before I started. Some of the old guys would joke about it. Some would just go quiet. Officially, it was structural concerns. Unofficially, someone had fallen in there once and never come out, at least not in one piece. We did not talk about it. We certainly did not climb into it. The weird thing was, Silo 3's weight sensors showed movement. Small, slow fluctuations, like something inside was shifting position. I frowned, tapped the screen, thinking it was a glitch. On the wall beside me was a faded missing person flyer, yellowed around the corners. A former worker who had vanished after leaving work, last seen at the elevator. He had the kind of face you forget, except for his eyes. Too tired, too young. I switched the yard camera view to the overhead shot. The grain silos came into view, hulking shapes under the cheap sodium yard lights. For a second, on the catwalk at the top of Silo 3, I saw someone. Tall, in coveralls, one hand on the rail, looking down toward the hatch. My heart jumped. Then the camera flickered, and the catwalk was empty. No one had checked out a harness. No one was supposed to be up there. If you have ever told yourself it was just the camera, you know how thin that excuse feels when the hair on your arms is already standing up. I told myself it was a glitch and grabbed my flashlight anyway. Outside, The air was thick with the sour smell of old grain and the damp promise of a storm still hours away. Gravel crunched under my boots. The only sound was the wind and the occasional ping of cooling metal. When I reached the base of Silo 3, the red beacon on top blinked once, just once, even though the control panel said it had no power. The metal ladder bolted to the side gave a single high ringing note. Like someone had stepped off the bottom rung a heartbeat before I arrived. I rapped my knuckles against the steel wall, more to prove to myself it was solid than anything. The echo pinged back hollow, not heavy, and full the way it had been loaded with grain ought to sound. That made no sense. The sensors showed Silo 3 was almost topped off. Behind me, the yard intercom crackled. I jumped, spinning around with the flashlight beam slashing through dust. No one stood there, just the speaker grill and a faint noise that, if I was honest, sounded like my name breathed through static. Back in the control room, the ticking clock over the coffee machine felt louder than it had any right to be. The inspector would be there at 6 on the dot. If I left Silo 3 with unknown readings, he would write it up, and my supervisor would write me up, and my dad would hear about it at the diner from the inspector himself. So when I called my boss half asleep at home and told him Silo 3 was acting weird, he did not want to hear about ghosts. He told me, very clearly, that if I wanted to keep my job, I needed to get eyes on that top hatch and verify it was empty. That I could have lied. I could have typed visual clear and gone back to scrolling my phone. Instead, I grabbed my radio, clipped it to my vest, and started climbing the tower stairs toward the catwalk. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was the thought of my dad's face if I got fired for being spooked by a camera glitch. Either way, once I started up those steel steps, there was no way to pretend I had not. The higher I climbed, the smaller the yard lights looked, until they were just sick yellow puddles on the gravel. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of moldy grain this time, damp and sour, rising from the chutes. The red beacon above Silo 3 blinked again, painting the foggy air in quick red frames. Between blinks, I could swear I heard something moving on the catwalk ahead of me, a slow, wet shuffle that did not match the rhythm of my own boots on metal dot on the catwalk. The hatch to Silo 3 sat crooked, seal tag snapped clean. Dust coated the railing, except for 2 clear handprints where someone had been leaning over, staring down. When I swung the hatch open the rest of the way and aimed my flashlight beam inside, the light seemed to fall forever. It should have hit grain after a few feet. Instead, it disappeared into darkness, then caught a faint, dull glimmer way down. The air that rolled up to meet me was colder than outside, thick with the smell of rot and old corn that has gotten wet and never dried. That I knew the rule. Never enter a bin alone. Always tie off. Always have a watcher. I also knew my supervisor would see the log, see that I had not followed his order. That was the hook in my ribs. While I stood there arguing with myself, a voice drifted up from the dark. It was a man's voice, coughing between words, calling for help. It sounded weak, hurt, but clear enough. Down here, please. I fell. I can't breathe. If you have ever heard someone genuinely begging like that, you know how little room it leaves for thinking straight, against every safety briefing I had ever sat through. I clipped my flashlight to my chest, swung my leg over the side, and found the interior caged ladder with my boot. The moment my weight settled on it, the yard lights flickered out. The highway noise vanished. It felt like the world outside the silo just stopped listening. My radio hissed, then went dead. Above me, the hatch slammed shut hard enough to ring through the metal dot. I climbed down anyway. The air got colder with each rung. Grain dust floated around me in slow, lazy spirals, sparkling when my flashlight beam hit it. The voice below kept talking, thanking me for coming, asking how long it had been, like he had been down there minutes, not years. My boot nudged something metallic on one rung. I fished it up. It was a rusted name badge, half eaten by corrosion, with the exact name from the missing person flyer upstairs and a hire date 15 years old. Something should have clicked for me right then. It did not. The voice was closer now, almost cheerful. "Just one more rung," it said. "I'm right here." The sensors said the bin was almost full. The hollow echo said it was not. My pride said I was not going to chicken out one rung from the bottom. So I went one rung lower and felt my foot sink into something that was not solid steel. The grain at the bottom felt wrong. It was not dry and loose. It clung to my boots, thick and cold, sucking at my ankles as if it wanted me deeper. My flashlight beam hit the surface and did not bounce right. It seemed to get swallowed, lighting up shapes beneath the kernels like long, pale limbs packed tight and reaching. Outside, somewhere far away, the red beacon flashed through tiny cracks, turning the dark around me into slow pulses of blood-colored light. The voice that had been below me was suddenly right at my ear, warm breath pushing grain dust against my skin. "You came down the proper way this time," it whispered. The ladder rung under my hands felt wrong when I grabbed for it. Not smooth and solid, but soft and ridged, like something pretending to be metal and almost getting it right. I pulled, and my fingers sank in past my nails. The whole structure shuddered, not like a building, but like something large shifting its weight. In that moment, I realized the hollow space inside Silo 3 was not a gap in the grain. It was a shape, tall, narrow, roughly human at the top, branching out below, wrapped in years of wet corn and dust and pieces of whatever else had fallen in. It had used that first man's weight as a handhold, pulling itself higher, and now every ladder rung, every safety cage bar was just more bone to grip. I had not come down to rescue someone. I had come down to give it a better grip a little closer to the hatch. They tell the story different at the elevator now. They say Silo 3 is sealed and empty, awaiting demolition. The inspector signed off on it as out of service. There is no official record of anyone dying there in the last few years. Just a foreman who stopped showing up in a position that needed filling. The faded missing flyer still hangs in the break room. Someone recently pinned a fresh one beside it, same photocopied, a different name written in the blank that if you drive past our town at night and look over at the elevator, you will not see much. Just gray towers against the dark. The power to Silo 3 has been cut for years on paper. But every so often, on a foggy night, drivers report a single red light blinking slowly on one of the silos. If you are curious enough to roll your window down when you see it, listen past the wind. If you hear a metal ladder ringing one rung at a time, or a dusty voice asking you to come down the proper way, do yourself a favor, keep driving. People like to joke about losing time on back roads, blaming it on a long day or a couple beers. In my town, we do not joke about that. Not about Willow Creek. Out there, time really does slip, like the creek reaches up and borrows an hour from you. Sometimes it gives it back. Sometimes it does not. I used to laugh at those stories, until the night the lights came down over the water and tried to cut me into a better version of myself. I was a graveyard shift deputy in a small county most people only pass through on the way somewhere else. My world at night was empty streets, closed gas stations, and the quiet glow of my patrol truck dashboard. I wanted out of nights. I wanted a day's shift, a normal schedule, a wedding date that did not keep getting pushed back because I was either working or sleeping. My fiancée had made it pretty clear. If I could not get off the graveyard shift within a year, she was done waiting. That meant no screw-ups, no weird reports, nothing that would make the captain roll his eyes and write UFO in the margins. That IT was just after 1 a.m. when dispatch called me. An older woman out near Willow Creek, frantic, said there were people walking in the sky over the water. I smirked at the wording, even as I wrote the address down. Out of the way farmhouse, dead-end road, the kind of place where loneliness gets loud. I put the truck in gear and started out of town. As I reached the edge of the city limits, my dashboard clock flicked to 1:11 a.m. and then stopped cold. The numbers just sat there, neon green, while the miles rolled by. At the gas station on the corner, I slowed for the stop sign and glanced at the bulletin board through the window. Even from the road, I could see the layer of missing dog flyers pinned over each other. All different breeds, all ages. Same note scribbled at the bottom of each. Last seen near Willow Creek. The power lines above the road hummed a little louder as I turned toward the dark strip of trees that hid the creek. I keyed my mic and told dispatch I was en route. My own voice came back a half-second late, like someone was replaying me with a slight delay. Then the normal static filter returned. Cicadas lined the ditch grass on both sides. But as the truck rolled closer to the creek, their noise faded all at once. Not gradually, not as if I drove out of range, but like someone turned a knob from loud to off. The only sounds left were the engine and the higher whine of the power lines following me. Then I saw them. Across the fields, just above the tree line, 3 pale blue lights drifting in a slow pattern. They did not blink like airplanes or tower lights. They glided, moving sideways against the wind. I told myself it was a group of teenagers with drones and expensive LED kits, a perfect chance to write a few tickets and look useful for once. The farmhouse porch light was on when I pulled in. The woman who met me at the door looked like someone's grandmother and someone's ghost at the same time. White hair, deep wrinkles, eyes too bright and wet. She smelled like whiskey, sure, but the bottles on the porch did not explain the way her hands shook as she gripped my sleeve. She said her husband had gone outside when the lights came, said he never believed her stories. She watched him step out into the field, and then she swore on her Bible. Watched him walk up the air like he was climbing invisible stairs toward the lights until he just thinned out and was gone. If she had slurred, if she had laughed, I might have taken it differently. Instead, she spoke like someone describing a car accident, detail by detail. His flannel shirt, his old cap, the way his shadow stretched wrong as he rose. My radio crackled with a joke from dispatch, trying to cut the tension. Try not to let Willow Creek skip you forward again, deputy. We just got the clocks reset. I tried to laugh it off for the woman's sake, but the sound died in my throat when I saw a pale blue glow drift silently over the tree line at the edge of her property. I told her to stay inside and lock the door. I told dispatch I would be clear by 2 a.m., that I was just checking for trespassers or kids with toys. That gave me less than an hour to handle whatever this was and still look like a serious cop. I walked back to the truck, grabbed my flashlight, and started down the dirt track that led to the old concrete bridge over Willow Creek. The air got colder the lower I went, and the smell changed, picking up that mix of stagnant water and something sharp and metallic that I could only think of as ozone. The power lines did not come down this far, but the hum in my ears kept building like I was standing under a substation. Halfway to the bridge, a dog stepped into my headlights. Medium-sized, one floppy ear, collar still on. I recognized it from one of the flyers, a shepherd mix that had supposedly vanished weeks ago. It stood there in the beam, staring straight at me, and its pupils reflected blue, not the usual green or yellow. No bark, no growl, just this weird, patient stare. Then it turned and walked off the road toward the trees. I knew better. I still followed. The deeper I went along the creek trail, the more the world shrank to the beam of my flashlight and that growing blue glow ahead. My radio hissed, then went dead. My phone had no bars. The only sounds were my own breathing and a hum that now felt like it was coming from inside my skull. Branches brushed my shoulders. The smell of creek mud and ozone got thick enough to taste. The dog disappeared through a stand of willows, and when I stepped after it, I came out into a small clearing that had no business being there. Right in the middle was a ring of smooth stones, each about the size of a football, laid out in a perfect circle on the damp ground. None of them looked like local rock. Too polished, too pale. Hovering just above the circle were the 3 blue lights, maybe 15 feet up, close enough now that I could see movement inside them, like clouds folding in on themselves. The hairs on my arms rose, not from static, but from a feeling you only get when something is very wrong and has been wrong for a long time. My brain, desperate for a normal explanation, latched onto the rusted metal half buried at the edge of the clearing. It looked like the corner of some old piece of equipment, maybe a weather station or a tower they had abandoned. For a second, I thought I had it. Some forgotten installation that still had power, maybe some sort of experimental lamp reflecting off mist. That would have been nice. Then the stones around my boots lifted an inch off the ground as if gravity forgot how to work. They began to revolve slowly around the circle, scraping softly against each other without touching the dirt. That my phone buzzed in my pocket. I nearly jumped out of my skin. The screen lit my hand with a harsh white light. I had a list of missed calls from my fiancée. The timestamps made my stomach drop. 2:45, 2:51, 2:58, 3 a.m. My frozen dashboard clock back in the truck, the one I had glanced at not that long ago, had still said 1:11 a.m. when I parked. The blue lights above me drifted lower, closing in like curious faces. I thumbed my body cam on, more on instinct than anything, and stepped fully into the ring of hovering stones to get a clearer shot. The smell of ozone slammed into me, filling my nose and mouth until it felt like I was breathing burning pennies. Sound flattened out. The creek on my left froze mid-ripple, like someone paused a video. The dog stood on the far bank with its front paws hanging an inch above the mud, legs stiff, eyes glassy and blue in my beam. The lights were close enough now that I could feel a pressure against my skin, like standing in front of a big speaker with no sound. They opened up, not like doors or hatches, but like eyes, widening, and inside each I saw Willow Creek from a different angle. One view showed the clearing empty. One showed me standing at the edge. The last showed me walking into the circle. Even though I was already there, the hum rose to a screaming pitch, and my bones vibrated with it. My body cam pointed up, catching my own hand reaching toward the nearest light. Only the arm in the screen stretched too far, joint bending wrong, like the footage was being pulled and smeared. For a 6 second I realized I was not looking out through the camera anymore. I was watching myself from somewhere above, like I had become one of the angles looking down. The thought hit me as clear as someone speaking in my ear. These were not ships or visitors. They were recordings, edits. Something had been taping this place, trying different versions, cutting and pasting people into the same scene. The next thing I knew, I was sitting in my patrol truck in the same driveway I had started from, headlights still washing over the farmhouse. My hands were clenched around the steering wheel so hard they hurt. My watch said 3:10 a.m. The dash clock still insisted it was 1:11. The older woman's porch light was off. Her front door was locked. When I pounded on it, nobody answered. Her husband never showed back up. The official report I wrote said, area checked, unable to locate subject. Possible mental health issue. The captain nodded, typed it into the system, and moved on. At home after my shift. My fiancée met me at the door, furious and scared. She said I had called her in the middle of the night, left a voicemail that was just me whispering about how beautiful the lights were over Willow Creek, how I could finally see the better version. The call log on her phone said 2:53 a.m. The call log on mine showed nothing. When we played the message, my voice sounded distant, like it was recorded in a big empty room with a bad echo.